And I'm here with Rabbi Mike Moskowitz, and he and I are both going to share some brief, but we hope significant reflections to bring us together in this morning of so many of us woke up to hear this horrific news coming from Australia, on top of the horrific news from Brown University in Providence here in the United States. And we also know that this is the 13th anniversary of the horrific massacre at Sandy Hook, the elementary school that left so many dead from a horrific gun violence. But today, on this Erev, this leading up into Hanukkah, we're particularly focused on what it means for we as a Jewish people to feel so deeply under attack in this moment of horrific violence. And the news is still not entirely clear about it, with all the details of exactly what happened, and lots of different pieces are coming in. But first and foremost, we stand with those families who are right now suffering so much pain at the loss of loved ones in such a horrific anti-Semitic terror attack on the beach, eating sufganiyot and thinking about celebrating Hanukkah as a community in Australia. We think of those who are suffering, who have been shot, who are wounded, and our deepest prayers for their recovery. And we're thinking about us as a worldwide Jewish people and what this means at this moment in time. We wanted to do a Facebook Live to kind of create a little bit of a community and for us to come together. And I know waking up this morning, it's like, what do I do now? How do I react? What's the response? So this is just a small attempt. So please feel free to put comments in the comment section and say where you're calling from or joining us from. I've never done a Facebook Live before, so thanks for being patient with me, and my gratitude to Rabbi Moskowitz, who helped make this happen. So Hanukkah has so many profound lessons in it, and today we just want to teach a few of them as we face what our people have faced throughout history, which is that there's tremendous Jew hatred in the world. And we have faced this before. It's certainly around the world right now in an exploding way. And some thoughts about our personal and communal responses, perhaps. And for both Rabbi Moskowitz and I, we go back to our tradition for guidance. We start with saying, what can we learn from history? What can we learn from God? What can we learn from our texts and our traditions? And what can we learn from each other? And that, I want to say, is really important. We have to look to each other, and we have to not be isolated and think that we're in this alone. That maybe is one of the biggest dangers that happens, is the sense of isolation and that no one understands, no one else is reacting, no one else is saying what we need to be said. And well, I'm not saying that Rabbi Moskowitz and I can say all those things. All of us on this call today can say them. And please, we need to hear from each of you, and each of you needs to reach out to your friends and your family and offer the wisdom, as imperfect as it might feel to you. It's important to the world for your compassion, your reaction to be heard. And it can be very, very, very simply by calling each other up, by reaching out with love and compassion. Many of you heard me teach over the years of the famous debate that exists in the Gemara about how do we light the Hanukkah itself. Do we, as one tradition has it, start with 8 candles and go down to 1 so that we're counting how many nights are left? And in some ways, that's a very practical way of doing it. We start with 8 because we know that there are 8 nights, going down to 7, 6, etc. And the other argument is that we start with 1 and we build up to 8, which is actually less on the surface the right way to do it, because what are you counting exactly? You're counting from 1 to 8. That's how many nights we've already had, or what night it is. But the tradition of that school of thought, of Hillel's school of thought, is that what we have to do is start with 1 small candle, which is the reality of living in the darkest time of the year. And for many of us in our lifetimes, this is the darkest time of our life. And the reminder that we can't start spreading light by having a big torch. It starts with each of us in very small, very significant ways. We're taught that our souls each are a flame of God. And if we light one candle, we understand that in this darkest time of the year, in the very dark time of our lives, we can do what we can do, which is one small candle. And each night becomes our task to increase the light. And that's really a metaphor for our lives, that our job is to start with what we have and each day increase the light in the darkness. That's practical, it's spiritual, and it expresses our strength and belief in God, that our ability is to start with what God has given us and to keep spreading it farther and farther and farther. And while that feels very hard when we feel so crushed by the news in general, let's be honest, and this specific news, it's very hard to imagine that we have the ability to spread light. And Hanukkah comes to teach us that, in fact, we start with one small light. That's our job. That's our obligation. That's what history demands of us, and it's what God wants of us. So now I'd like to invite Rabbi Moskowitz to do a little teaching, and then I'll be back with you, and we'll keep this pretty brief, but I'm so moved to be with all of you right now.
Thank you, Rabbi Kleinbaum. It's so good to be in community in times like these, and there's no substitute for it. I want to share a teaching that's been meaningful for me for many, many years from a Rebbe of mine, Rav Nachman Bulman Zatzal, who observes what the rabbis bear witness to, that the 36 candles that we're going to light over the course of Hanukkah correspond to the 36 hours that we were in the garden, and that initial light. And he also observes that if you count from the word Bereshit in the book of Genesis, if you count 36 words, you get to the word Bain, between, where God separates between the darkness, and the 37th word is the word Ha'or, for the light. And he says that there's a difference between the light that we see now after the garden in this physical and finite way. It's the light of our ability to understand things, to perceive things, our vision, and it's by its very nature limited. It doesn't make a difference how powerful the telescope. All we see is more questions. It's a new horizon. There's just a new extended limit with that. But there's a deeper light, and that's a light that's hidden. That's a light that is distinct in its very nature. Because although there are people who are looking to explore Mars and new frontiers, that kind of light never translates into our understanding between what's right and what's wrong, what's true and what's false, whether or not we're able to be kind to people. And so that's the miraculous nature of the light that we're looking to uncover, is to break the cycle, to break the nature of violence. The story between the Greeks of the time and the Jews were one of finding limitation within wisdom. It's what you see is what's real. And we said, no, there's something that you can't see. It's the human condition and the capacity in expansive ways to love, to be able to respond to hate, not in kind, but by going above it and by loving deeper in more expansive ways. And that's what we ultimately celebrate in terms of the miracle. The word miracle is in Hebrew nes. It's 2 letters. It's the nun, which is always bent over. It represents nefila, falling, and oppression. It's one of the reasons why in the alphabetical acrostic of Ashrei we skip it. It's the only letter that's skipped. And the letter samech is the circle. It's a language of support. That God and we in community support those who are fallen. And those 2 words, those 2 letters together form the word miracle, the nun and the samech. It's the shift from the oppression and the hate to now being able to support people with equality. Every place on the circumference is equally distant to the epicenter. And that's the miraculous holiday aspect that we're trying to not just celebrate, but to relive. When people are down, we build them up, and that we break the cycles of hate and violence. And that itself brings us back to that prelapsian state in the garden, where there is no discrimination and there is no hate. There's just the expansiveness of love.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Moskowitz. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. How do we find the light? And this has become the question for our people for generations, of course. And as Rabbi Moskowitz described, there is this light that is there for us to find. It's part of our job to make sure our eyes, our ears, our consciousness is open to it. And that miracle is what we're looking for, right? It's easy to collapse into a place of complete despair over the possibility of something different than what's empirically available to our senses. And what God gives us is the opportunity to keep rising above that low level of consciousness, the lower level of understanding, to be able to see there is a different horizon that's possible for us to find. And that kind of light, the Or HaGanuz, which I know some of you are familiar with, that Rabbi Moskowitz referred to, is there for each of us in this moment, left for us in the future from the creation. And now we're in that future that we need that level of light to see our way through. How do we respond to hate? How do we respond to the violence that exists? Do we become just like that hate and just like that violence? Do we find ways to recover humanity and to keep learning over and over and over again the teaching that in a place where there is no humanity, the Mishnah teaches us that's precisely the time we have to be so deeply human. One other teaching about Hanukkah as we approach lighting the first light tonight is that the question is always asked, what's the miracle of Hanukkah? Of course, there was a military victory, but interestingly, the rabbis do not focus on that as being represented in the lighting of the Hanukkah. We don't focus on the military victory, and honestly, that military victory didn't last more than 2 generations. We focus on the spiritual victory because the spiritual victory of Hanukkah lasts till us. We continue to hold the spiritual victory of Hanukkah, which is somebody had the chutzpah to go into that holy place of the Beit HaMikdash that had been destroyed, not just physically, but spiritually. It was no longer a center of holiness. And somebody had the chutzpah to say, look, there's only a little bit. We don't have abundant resources to cure the big problem that's facing us right here, which is the destruction of our people, the destruction of the temple, the destruction of our identity. I just have this tiny little vial of oil. And this guy, this person, whoever it was, nameless into history, could have been any one of our ancestors, said, you know what? I do have 1 vial of oil, and that is enough for me to start this process. I don't have enough for 8 nights, but I'm not going to not do 1 because I don't have enough for 8. And that becomes the struggle that we have. How do we say, okay, we might not have enough to accomplish all that we want to see to make sure that violence and gun violence and hatred of other people and objectification is gone, but I have this 1 vial of oil, and I am going to light what I can with the 1 vial of oil, knowing that that is a spiritual exercise that defies the empirical truth, right? The empirical truth is I don't have enough. But spiritually, we are the descendants of that person who said it's not about only empirical data here. It is about the spiritual truth that we as human beings, created in the image of God, have the power to light a small light that ended up becoming enough, and we are the descendants of that person. That spiritual truth continues to be true today. So we wish you a Hanukkah full of miracles. And sometimes the miracles are a lot smaller than we imagine miracles to be. Sometimes the miracles are a lot smaller, like not burning your house down with the latkes. Okay, start there. Sometimes the miracle is finding a way to light that candle. And we're told that we're supposed to put the Chanukiah in the window to publicize our commitment to our spiritual tradition and to who we are as Jews. Please do that. And we remember those who have stood with us throughout history and continue to today, and not only focus on those who are agents of destruction. Can we be that little light that starts to illuminate this huge darkness? I believe in all of you. I know you can do it. I will pray for you, and I ask you to pray for us as we continue to do it. So make sure you take some pictures of your Chanukiah tonight. Post your pictures. That's kind of our window in the modern world, right? To post a picture of your Chanukiah. Say the blessings, sing the songs, eat some gelt. I personally prefer dark chocolate. Randy prefers the milk chocolate. eat some latkes, sufganiot, in whatever way, celebrating who we are as Jews is the most powerful response to anti-Semitism there is. So, Chag Urim Sameach, we say, may your holiday of Hanukkah be full of joy and of light in this time of terrible sadness. And may we continue to make sure that we strengthen the Jewish tradition as a response to this horrific, horrible anti-Semitic terror attack. So, dear friends, Chag Urim Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Bye-bye, everybody, and thank you for joining us.